agriculture in the Nigerian economy is pivotal and it's very, very important. And it was actually the mainstay of our economy before we found oil. And since we found oil, it seems as if we've thrown to the back burner agriculture. But it's still the largest contributor to GDP to a large extent. But again, and a lot of people, it's interesting to note that people must understand that agriculture is the only industry in which civil servants are allowed to play, even whilst working. You know, so that brings us to the issue of food security. A food secure nation is a wealthy nation. So if you're not food secure, then of course you know that you are preparing for doomsday. From my vantage position as chairman of NASIMA, the export group, and again as one of the largest agricultural companies in Nigeria, who practice from farm to fork, I will say the farmers we have in our fold are quite organized. And we take advantage of the numerous intervention funds that the CBN offers. Normally, the intervention funds we're talking about are ad hoc. And they are brought about as a result of the fact that the Ministry of Agriculture itself was not playing its role. So, nature abhors a vacuum. So, CBN, to a large extent, has come up with a lot of intervention funds. But my worry and my quarrel is that these intervention funds are seen by some, in the country as a kind of political IOU. Which is not the case, because by the time you're given a loan for 12, 24 months, you pay back so that the next set of farmers or the next set of set of farmers can benefit from it. So Nigeria is replete with a lot of agricultural policies, which you can go from Green Revolution, Operation Feed the Nation, and all that, agricultural change agenda and all that. But for me, it's not about the policies, it's about the processes and systems and the stratagems that are employed in making sure that it is effective and it is efficient. Most of the time, it is neither effective nor efficient, and it's a tragedy. But I will say, in the last 4 or 5 years, intervention funds on the part of the CBN have gone to the multinationals like us, have been judiciously used. And but I cannot speak to the other cooperatives that have used such. I think the CBN governor alluded to something in one of his interviews, that the problem they have is repayment. But again, if you have a problem with repayment, you need to retweak, and work on it. For us, for example, you have to understand one thing, that the farmers are the ones who they're the goose that lay the golden eggs. And you need to support them, you need to collaborate with them. So people often talk about the fact that multinationals come and take a lot, take away the bounty. You cannot take away the bounty without making sure that the farmers who produce the bounty are taken care of. So it is it's collaborative on our part. We support them with seedlings, we support them with small bridging loans, micro credits. That's what we do from our part. And again, this intervention funds on the part of the CBN is, don't forget that the intervention funds on the part of the CBN are single digit. If you go to any bank, it's double digit. We're talking about 16, 17, 18%. The CBN funds during COVID was as low as 5%, 7%. Okay? And I think as we are coming out of COVID, it's gone back to 9% thereabout, which was the original rate. And like I said, the multinational companies and the big organizations have been judiciously using those funds. But what we should try and monitor and track is the other ones who think that these funds are for political IOUs. But a lot of them use it for the value chain process. A lot use it for processing, a lot use it for getting improved seedlings, a lot use it for infrastructure. When I mean infrastructure, I'm talking about agricultural infrastructure, for like cold storage, for example. Because a lot of the farm produce that we have rots in the villages, in the hinterland, because they don't get to the city, So, and by the time they get to the city, excuse my French, and apologies to Chino Achebe, we're no longer at ease. I mean, I have said at different forums that we will never have a food crisis, but we'll never have a food crisis, but we will have a palate change. And the palate change is that people switching from what they used to eat before to different, options, oatmeal, cornmeal, Nigerians are very innovative with respect to what they want to eat. So someone just comes and says, go and try this. And before you know it, becomes a, a staple. So because you have to be innovative. Innovate or die, let's put it that way. The cold storage works, but the cold storage will only work with big multinationals who want to support that. Because the cold storage, the funding for the cold storage is it should be 3, 4, 5 years. It should be long tenured. But these intervention funds are not too long tenured. They're basically between 2 years and max 3 years. So that cycle is completed and the funds are given to the next person. But the Anchor Borrower program for corn, maize, soya, rice, I think so far so good, but we can do better in terms of tracking. I think it has impacted the market marginally in the sense that don't forget that the fertilizer you see is blended. Okay, and I think the government entered into an agreement with Morocco. Morocco is the largest phosphate producer in the world, and of course, phosphate is the major ingredient for fertilizer. So, and again, gone are the days when you do 15, 15, 15 and think that 15, 15, 15 will give you the desired crop. You need to do proper soil map, soil testing to know which fertilizer to apply. And I think to a large extent, before now, we used to have middlemen in this fertilizer trade. But the middlemen have to a large extent been eliminated. And that worked very well during Dr. Akinwumi Adesina's tenure as Minister of Agriculture, where he introduced the wallet system, which I think to a large extent has been copied by a lot of countries across Africa. So we're large, how would I put it? We are a country that leads sometimes in those innovations, but we lead in those innovations somewhere, and somewhere along the line we let it slip, and we forget the fact that when the train leaves the station, it's not all the time that it comes back to pick anybody else. So when it does come back, if you're not ready to jump in again, the train has left the station and you're left behind. Big rice pyramids, interesting conversation. Big rice pyramids are pyramids that, of course, you remember back in the day in the 60s and 70s, we used to have the granite pyramids in Kano. And right now in Nigeria, I think the pyramids that exist only exist in a place like Kebbi. Because Kebbi, the governor has been very deliberate to make sure that Kebbi is a state where he tells anyone who cares to listen that my state is a rice state, a rice producing belt. So Kebbi produces rice, Niger produces rice, Nasarawa produces rice, a bit of Kaduna, a bit of Jigawa. But Nigeria consumes 7 million tons of rice. We produce around about between 3 and 4 million. Then there's a deficit of about 2-3 million. And that deficit of about 2-3 million can be covered over a period of time. But that period of time is geometric, not arithmetic. Arithmetic is usually 1, 2, 3. Geometric is usually 2, 4, 6. So we need to be careful, we need to be deliberate, we need to give time to these things. And I alluded to something again which Nigerians tend to talk about. They talk about rice mills. Rice mills is the machinery which you use. Where's the paddy? It's the paddy that you put in the rice mill that gives you rice. Okay, paddy across the nation is expensive because of foreign exchange exchange rates issues, because of the other things, the other ingredients that surround that whole chain. But for me, I think the paddy that you produce is quite good. I mean, for us in Olam, for example, we have varieties like Faro 44. Faro 44 is one that we did in conjunction with an organization where we try to improve seedlings and to improve yield. The yields in Nigeria are not that bad. They could be better. We're talking about yields of between 4.5, 5, 6 per hectare. But you're talking about countries who are doing 20 tons per hectare. But today, again, the journey of 1,000 miles starts with a step. I think to a large extent, this government has been able to bridge the gap, okay, from what we used to consume before now in terms of importation and what we produce locally. So there's been a kind of a rice armada, if you know what I mean. And I think, but again, another problem we had prior to now was smuggling. Smuggling is recurring. If we can only get customs to not turn the other cheek. And look at Benin Republic. Benin Republic is less than, population-wise, less than 10, 12, 14 million. The 2 million tons of rice comes into Benin Republic every year. I mean, the nation doesn't consume 2 million tons of rice. Not disrespect to them. They're too small to consume 2 million tons of rice that comes from Vietnam and India. Where is it destined for? Nigeria through the ports. And it's the incentive to bring in smuggled rice is because you don't pay duty. The duty on rice itself is high. Used to, at a point in time, it used to be 40-20, 40% and 20% levy. You know, that was 60%. And so you can imagine if you're not paying 40 to 40 for a 60% levy and duty, it's easy. So it's cheaper to buy foreign rice than local ones. So that, for me, I think it's something that we need to try and work on, particularly the customs. The customs need to police those borders. But our borders are very, very porous and very massive as well. From the north, I mean, I went to Niger State some time ago. And Niger State, for those who don't know, is one of the largest states in the country.
About 50,000
You can,
kilometers of land.
I mean, it is more, I say massive, I mean massive. Yeah. Massive.
Close to half of England.
Yes. And just like this, the same way Sambisa Forest is twice the size of Belgium. You know what I mean? So I went to Borgu. Borgu has a border with Benin Republic. So, I mean, traveling across Niger State is like traveling across countries, if you know what I mean. There's power here, there's this there, there's that there. But you know what? In spite of all that, that's the state I believe has not been able to harness its potential. I think the staple crop processing zone that the AFDB has come up with is a novel idea. It's a laudable idea, but I think it's something that should be replicated across zones, across the country. We should have belts that are good or that are noted for different things. So you have a rice belt, you have a tomato belt, you have a palm oil belt. Those are the kind of things I think I want to see. And it's not rocket science, with due respect. But I don't understand why sometimes people just act very cluelessly. I mean, excuse my French again. To that extent, we were able to sell a lot of our local rice, Mama's Pride, you know. So for us, it was good. But you see, you cannot keep the borders closed indefinitely. Because the borders, people do want to move goods and services across the borders legitimately. So trucks want to move through carrying legitimate goods from, particularly for the industries around. You know, don't forget that Nigeria is supplies that to the entire West African market a sizable chunk of finished goods. Okay, which when the borders are closed, it doesn't help. Nobody wants to do maritime when you can do road. But another thing we need to work on is this so-called Trans-Saharan and Trans-African highway, which we've been talking about from Cairo to Cape Town. I mean, we've talked about this thing for the last 30, 40 years. You know, you sometimes look at us and you say to us, when did we get to this sorry pass? The simple things we don't do. We used to have agricultural rolling plans. We used to have development plans. But all of a sudden, we've jettisoned all that. And what we now do is that we're not strategic anymore. We're very ad hoc. So, and again, we have a lot of policy flip-flops. So another administration comes into power and looks at what the other one did and says, you know what, let's throw away the baby with the bathwater. I mean, look at what is happening in the area of livestock, for example. I mean, open grazing or no open grazing. You know, for everything about us, we turn into politics. You know, we fail to see the economics. We only look at the politics. Unfortunately, Nigerians are going to we have a palate change. Nigerians are eating cassava and derivatives of cassava. We're the largest producer of cassava in the world, not even in Africa, in the world. We're the largest producer of yam in the world. Okay? Forget the fact that the so-called yam that comes from Ghana gets to the export markets. That's because we don't do the right thing we need to do. We need to follow process. You know, sometimes we're not very diligent. You know, so we don't follow process certifications and all that. So we have rejections at ports of entry with respect to some of our exports. So we need to just do the right thing. So sweet potato, for example, same thing. So we're the largest in these areas, but we have not really we've not really put our money where our mouth is with respect to some of these things. Are coming up with derivatives therefrom. But for me, I think somewhere along the line, we will get someone who has an idea and who will allow the private sector to thrive. You see, private sector should be allowed to thrive. Government should just come up with the enabling policy, enabling environment, and let them thrive. And that's what we just need. You see, when government has no business in business, government should just lay the policy, let that policy be long-term, and let's move. That's what our peers in the likes of Côte d'Ivoire, the likes of Senegal, the likes of Togo, the likes of those countries do. Policies that are sustainable and that are consistent over time and gives you time to plan.